And welcome everybody. It's really fun to be here. I had fun putting this together, and I'm just going to share my screen. You get to see all my, oops, stop share. That's not what I wanted to share. There we go. And I'm going to make it bigger and set it up. There we go. So today is, leading through a lot of re's, the reset, the refocus, replanning, reopening, and into recovery. Thank you again to the Chamber for putting this on, really appreciate it. I'm going to go through, the first part is about refocusing, where we are and what we can do. Replanning, I've got 7 P's I'm going to go through with replanning to help everybody think about not just one area of your business, but all 7. And then about how we reopen if we're not open, or how we continue if we're continuing with business and opening up more. And recovery moving forward. So to say the least, these past few weeks have been disruptive. There's some words that I don't like to say. I find it really difficult when people talk about it being challenging, because it's only challenging if you think it's challenging. If you want to be proactive, you can be proactive. Is there challenging times? Absolutely. Are there, have we been disrupted? Absolutely, and affected. It's affected where we work, how we work, and even if we work. So I like to talk about statistics about this. And thanks to the Canadian Chamber, they did a survey that came out last Wednesday. A third of the businesses believe that they've reported a decline of 40% or more. 50% at least 20% decline in business. More than 2/3 of businesses have been highly impacted by lessening demand, and more than 3/4 of businesses have had to change the way they do business because of the physical distancing rules. So this is huge on our businesses. It's impacted us greatly. One of the things that a lot of people have said to me is, I don't know what's going to happen. Do you hear about people talking about new normal, next normal? What is it? My whole idea of that is we're right now in the new normal. There's going to be a next normal and a next normal. And I don't like to think of it in those terms. I like to think of it as, what do we know and what can we do? And it's as simple as that. So as soon as you know about that, you can do a lot more towards helping yourself recovery. We don't know when Dr. Bonnie Henry is going to open the doors completely, but we can plan for it, and we can have an action plan for all of it. And that's the whole point. So what we're going to work on as a plan, in our plan, is about our people, our products, our profits, which means money, our processes, how they change, how they're going to change, how they need to change, our place, if we have a place, or are we going to a place anymore? All of those things. And then finally, promotion. How do we let people know? How do we let our clients know, hey, we're open again, once we've closed the door and said, no, we're not, right? So we've been in a holding pattern for the last 6 weeks. It's a tough holding pattern, but we can be proactive, and I'm calling it, there's 3 stages to this opening. We do know there's going to be 3 stages. So the 3 stages are what we're in right now, the days and weeks before we can reopen, if we're reopening, or the days or weeks of restriction, if you want to call it that. The next stage is the actual reopening, or the gradual lifting of restrictions. And then finally, the post-opening and recovery stage. So if there's nothing else that we know that we can plan for 3 stages. And that's what I'm talking about today, is planning in those 3 stages. One of the most important P's, I think, is people. obviously it's the relationships that you have. So what can you plan? First of all, this has been tough on ourselves as business owners. You know, just dealing with business interruption where your business changed overnight is hard enough. Now we have to come out of it the other side. How do we lead ourselves first? Because honestly, if we're not leading ourselves, we can't lead our team and we can't lead our company. So having the ability to lead and being resilient ourselves, because we're going to have to be the ones that our team leans on. So have we got our vision back? Have we got our resiliency? And do we have the strength to lead? So leading ourselves first is really important. Next is leading the team. Having those lines of communication open and being transparent is something that I believe is really important. It's okay to say, I don't know what opening looks like. Most of us don't. But if you don't even talk to your team, that's even worse. Letting them know that, you know, I don't know what it looks like, but I'd like to know where you're at. How are you doing? Being compassionate to them along the way, being sensitive to their needs, really, really helps with the recovery section. You know, letting them know, I don't know that I can hire everybody back all at once. It's going to depend. Opening your doors is one thing. Getting customers and a stream of revenue is another thing. So just being clear and transparent with them is one of the things that you can do. And hopefully they'll be transparent back and say, I'm not in a good place, or I'm anxious to get back. Let me know when I can, right? Those things are really important when you're dealing with your team. And then, you know, making sure that you've got the right people in the right place. Things have changed. Looking at that and identifying who it is that you really need back, and perhaps someone else, you know, not. And that's about leading your company. Finally, leading your company is about, you might have to look at your purpose. Is your purpose the same as it was before? You have to be able to make clear decisions, and sometimes making those tough decisions, right? So, you know, when you're looking after yourself and you're leading your team and leading your company, you got to be able to make all of those decisions at every level. And you also need to communicate. Communicate, basically be the motivator, the positive voice for your company, for your team, and keeping everybody in the right positive headspace going forward. Basically, your leadership is needed more than ever. And it's because you're going to be leading more than just yourself, more than just your team. You need to be able to talk to your customers. Those are other relationships, some of the most important things. And I wouldn't wait until you're going to open to talk to them. I'd be sending them a message now, even touching base. How are you doing? I know we've been closed for a while. We're looking forward to reopening. Not sure when that is. We'll let you know. You'll be the first to know, right? And the other one is the relationships with suppliers. If you have supplies, and being in contact about what's available now, what's not available, so that you can be proactive with what you stock in your place. If you're a retail company and there's one big part of what you used to stock not available anymore, how do you replace that? I've been talking to restaurant owners who are saying some supplies for ingredients are hard to find. So that means a menu change. Do it now. Don't wait until you find out it's not and then you're scrambling. Another supplier I've heard that might have some tough times is the beauty industry, right? Colors might be hard to find because they were not manufactured as much. So all of those things affect how you do business going forward. The more you know now and be proactive, the better you'll be in the recovery. Any questions so far? I'm just, you know, I don't have my raise hand, so let me know if any, just unmute yourself if you have a question. I'll just keep going if not. The next P is the product. Now, these are the things that you need to look at before opening, right? So I mentioned things like what's available so that you can keep your products in stock. Or the other thing is services, you know, product or service. One of the things that I've been reading about is the difference between this disruption in our businesses and a recession. Does everybody know what that difference is? In the past, most of the recessions are based on products, you know, oil, stuff like that. This is the first time when it's been a humongous hit on services. So look at the services that have been forced to close. Everything from spa, aesthetics, chiropractors, dentists, physiotherapists, massage therapists, the entire tourism industry. So services, everything's been affected, especially in the service industry. This might be a time to, or really is a time to refocus your vision, mission, and your core values. You know, I'm a huge fan of strategic planning. I do it for clients all the time. Unfortunately, the strategic plan we did in December probably doesn't apply anymore. We have to look at that again, conduct a whole new SWOT analysis. You know, what your strengths were then might not be your strengths now. Same with your weaknesses. Perhaps there's some huge opportunities out there and often more threats. I mean, I can't remember one company thinking a worldwide pandemic was one of the threats out there, but that's what we're looking at now. So what are the results of that, right? So now, you know, I hate to say it, but you have to be honest with yourself and find out what's the relevancy of your business now. Can you do it differently? Have you had to do it differently? What have you changed and what do you need to change going forward? So these are some really good things you need to analyze before you reopen if you're one of those companies that were forced to close. Some companies weren't forced to close but chose to close, and they can reopen now if they want, if they get their planning in place. So, and then there's the ones that never got affected or got affected to the positive where they're really busy and they're still busy. So that's a different story.
Cindy,
yeah.
I've got a question if I could.
Yeah.
About the concept of SWOT analyses moving up. I was on a different call this morning with there was a futurist involved, and he was talking about how the pandemic has really accelerated a lot of the trends that people were seeing here. So when it comes to both opportunities and threats in our business, is that one of the things that you recommend when you're looking at that SWOT analysis, is like take your long-term plan and see if it's suddenly become a short-term one?
Yeah. Refocusing on all of it, the whole entire plan, exactly. You're right, those things, you know, I think in 3 years, we were thinking that the world might go remote. The world went remote in 1 day, right? So that's a good example of the acceleration. So yeah, I'm a big fan of planning as much as you can and revisiting all of those things and seeing, you know, what now if it's already become a reality? I know a lot of businesses that turned remote that never thought in a million years they could, but it's amazing what they had to do because they had to, right? So now what? Now what does it look like going back? That's not a new normal, that's just reality. That's just what you have to face. Great question, Tim, thank you. Did I answer it okay for you?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome, yeah. No, I'm a big fan of the SWOT analysis. I also look at a PEST analysis, which is political, economical, social, and trends in technology, how that affects your business as well. So, so now what I've talked about, people and product are part of your plan. So you have to refocus them before you can plan moving forward. So planning for now, planning for relaunch and beyond. So those 3 stages I talked about are really, really important. And I'm recommending a rolling 90-day plan, which has at some point you opening in it, but you don't know when that's going to be. So you have to keep rolling it, right? So that it's an operational plan, that timeline. So what kind of lead time do you need before you can actually open. And what are those things that you need to do so that when you get the word from whoever it is that you need to, that, hey, you can open, you might not get a month, you might get a week saying, okay, we can start opening. You might get 2 weeks. We don't know. They're supposed to announce some things this week. And my biggest thing is, it doesn't matter, be prepared. If you're prepared, those announcements you shouldn't have to wait for. You just know that you're ready for them. So what kind of lead time do you need? What do you need to order and the availability? I talked about that, and planning for that. And then planning for your people. You know, are you gonna bring them all back at once or stagger them in? Just gotta plan for every piece of your business on that 90-day plan and keep the communications going. And then the cash flow, that's the other 90-day. I highly recommend you do some sort of a cash flow or budgeting or keeping on top of, you know, your costs and all of that, and when you can start to count on a revenue stream that's either starting or going up, hopefully going north. So
just to add on that, it's Acacia here. Some of the business owners that we're talking to, you know, haven't thought about the cash flow implications to their operations, right? So, you know, if it's a restaurant, like how much food do you buy when you're unsure of the demands, right? So I think it's really important that these do go hand in hand, because as you start to open up, you'll start to incur more expenses. And if you've paid out a bunch of money in this time without receiving any funding, it's going to impact. So there's been some people that we've been seeing that are maybe trying to go too quickly on it without having a plan in place. So it's just to add importance to that, I'm really happy that you brought it up, but for everyone on the line to like make sure that those are almost tied together so that you have a good understanding of when you can make your operational purchases. Yeah, anyway, it's a little bit there. Thanks, Cindy.
No, it's great. And my next one even adds to that because it talks about the 4th P, which is profits. So really making sure, you know, first we're planning about, you know, trying to make these, and now making sure that we have all our ducks in a row. The worst thing you can do is spend a lot of money to open and there's no demand. So, you know, my 7th P is promotion. So we'll talk about that after, because, you know, it's really important to get clients back, get customers back. And the timing of both is hard to make sure that you have the timing in place to do both. So budgets and projections are really, really important. And KPIs, a fancy name, key performance indicators. How do you measure without having to get an accountant to tell you? You know, something as simple as how many people came through the door, how many customers you get in a day. Those kind of things help you measure your progress along the way so that you know how many, you know, looking at your cash sales, once you start getting people through the door, keeping that measurement going and really knowing where you're at on your top line and bottom lines really going to help you, especially in this. The 5th P, processes. Big fan of systems and processes. You had systems and processes before you closed. Now they're going to be changed. You know, some of the statistics I talked about at the very start was one of the, sorry, lost my train of thought all of a sudden, was when you shut the door, it's really easy to shut the door. When you open the door, now you've got different way to do business. 3/4 of the Canadians said that they were affected the way they do business. So that's what I was going for here. 3/4 of businesses have had to adjust the way they do business because of COVID-19 protocol. So when you open, what is the protocol going to be? And it's not just protocol that is mandated. If you're waiting for mandated, I think you're going to be left behind. You need to decide what you think you need to do. Right now, Health Canada has some very good standards. You know, you need a cleaning protocol. You need to distance 6 feet physically. And how do you set that up now? If you set that up now and then you open, you know you're safe. And it's not just what's mandated, it's also what's expected. What's the perception out there? And how do you make both your team and your clients feel safe to come back? If you don't make them feel safe, even if you're not mandated to do it, then you're not going to get the clients back that you're expecting. So it's not just about what's mandated, it's also about perception and what's expected right now. Right now, it's expected to be 6 feet apart anywhere in your business, and it's expected to have some sort of cleaning protocol at a minimum. How do you incorporate what you need to do? I mean, you know, there's also might be PPEs needed, the personal protection equipment, those kind of things. How do you account for that? How do you make sure you've got it on hand if you need it? Other things, maybe you need some plexiglass. Where do you put it? Do you put it up now or do you wait till you're mandated? So those are all things that you need to think about in your processes, and making sure that you have some way to communicate and train for that before you open, or do it as you go.
Cindy, just to add on that too, because some people might be wondering, you know, where do you find that information, because it's not available right now from the BC government. If you were to look at the Ontario, Alberta, Saskatchewan, or Manitoba reopening plans, a few of them are quite detailed that talk about the different protocols needed in order to flip a client or customer. And so it may not be for BC, but it's a good kind of starting point for companies or for organizations to look at. Deanna, maybe I'll send you the links to those and we can send that out with Cindy's PowerPoint after today.
Yeah, those are great points. That's about, you know, you may not know the information, but you can certainly look at other areas and find out and do your own research. And like I said, the more you can be proactive, the better opening you're going to have, or the better recovery you're going to have. So the 6P in this whole thing is the place. You know, is it business as usual? How did your business change and how will it be different once you open again? And then again, in the final stage, what happens when the restrictions are lifted? Will you keep some of the things? Or are you going to change back? You need to plan all of that all the way through. You know, there's a lot of people that have gone online, having some really good success with that. Do you need to go back? What about the remote workers? There's, I heard a really good statistic that there's going to be a good majority of offices not being needed because the remote, 50%, they're saying up to 50% of people working remotely now may stay that way. Might not be your first choice, but you might not have a choice but to have them remote, especially if there are people at risk, but they're really good workers. Why wouldn't you work with them that way? Suddenly there's going to be office space. The landscape of the place might change. You might not need as much square footage as you used to do. If you're retail and you went online, do you need a smaller place? All of those things come into play in your long-term planning. So that's SWOT analysis. Tim, I see your hand up.
Yeah, that has some interesting knock-on effects too, doesn't it? Though, I mean, if you were a business, say if you were a downtown coffee shop that relies on a business traffic crowd, and that crowd isn't coming back, that's one of the knock-on effects, right?
Yeah, the business is going to be affected, and that's why doing that SWOT analysis is really, really important right now. Because how is it going to change, right? And not saying that people aren't still going to go for coffee, but are they still the numbers that were there, right? All of those things, great points, yeah. The economy, the whole business landscape is changing and changing rapidly right now. We don't know where the dust is going to fall, but we can be proactive and think about that and plan for that, right? Still on place, if you're bricks and mortar, we talked about reordering and getting the stocks, getting the supplies. You can see this nice empty shelves. How do you fill your shelves again? What kind of PPE do you need? What kind of cleaning? You got to do a huge clean, you know, when you go back, because some offices haven't been inhabited for 6 weeks. Some have, but on a smaller basis with less people. So how do you just make sure that you get up and running, looking at all the different supplies, stocks, everything. And then the final stage, this is Tim's favorite, the promotion part. I'm saying that you need 3 different messages for each different stage. Right now, your message might be, we're closed, sorry, or we're on limited hours, or by appointment only. Whatever your message is now, think about how it's going to change once things start to open up, or once you decide to open up, if that's a choice you have. So when you're going to open, what is your message going to be? And then what is your message once the recovery comes? And then there's a second part to promotion, which is, how do you let your clients know, right? You should be in constant contact with them somehow, through social media, through email, whatever, you know, if you've got a huge clientele and you shut your doors, you need to keep those lines of communication open so that you lose as few as possible and possibly gain more. And then once you open, having a marketing plan, a strategy for opening. How do you let them know you're open? If you're in an industry that's going to get slammed the minute you open your doors, things that have been closed, I know that most people need a haircut. How do you plan for opening for that? Because everybody's going to want to come back in the first week. Can't handle that. What's going to be your plan to make sure everybody comes back and it's not overwhelmed your entire staff for the first week? How can you plan a gradual comeback? You know, a set of clients coming back week 1, a set of clients coming back week 2, set of clients, right? So make some sort of, remember that rolling 90-day plan? How about a rolling 90-day getting your clients back? If you're so lucky that you have one of those businesses where you're just going to come back with a vengeance. Other businesses don't have that luxury. So how do you let everybody know you're open and get your demand back that you had before? Really important for your cash flow going forward. Just to touch on the Canadian programs that have come out, not going to put, I know that there's a lot of websites that have this. All I'm saying about the programs is, oops, I'm sorry, is they're ever changing. Thank you for calling the Piva. Sorry, I can take your call right now. I haven't got a phone call for about 3 weeks. Finally comes today. Programs are ever changing. Keep looking at them. And there's probably going to be something for recovery once everything starts to settle a bit. So watching for those. And they're available at YKA Strong, so I'm not going to say much more about those. But other than, as business owners, we need to be proactive. Don't wait for somebody to say or to give you advice that you should do it. Look and be informed yourself. And I always like to give some hope. Over history, the GDP of Canada, when you look at all of the blips in 1980, 2008, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, there's probably going to be a big hole for 2020. But over time, the message is we always have recovered. So there will be a recovery, and it will be, it's just a matter of when, not if. So just summarizing my 7-step plan for recovery, looking at all areas of your business, planning, looking at your product or your service, doing that SWOT analysis, reviewing your vision, mission, core values. Are you still relevant? If not, what do you need to change to make yourself back to being relevant? The planning, the profits, making sure that you've got everything in order, keeping in constant contact with the people, your team, your customers, leading your company, and keeping in touch with your suppliers, adjusting as you need. Forever doing that. Your place, analyzing your place, getting it cleaned up, getting it ready to reopen if that's what you need to do, looking at all the stuff you need to do in order to get that in place, adjusting your processes and for protocol, training people on that protocol, and then getting your promotional plan for when you can open. Having that in place, all of these things in place now, even if you don't need them, and keep them rolling in time for when you do need them, is going to be the key to getting back on your feet and back on your way to recovery. That's what I have for today, and hoping if there's any more questions. Thanks for the questions along the way too, guys. You can unmute yourself. I can go back to any of these that you want to read, or I'm not open. I'm going to stop sharing now. Any comments, any takeaways?
Cindy, it's Arjun here. Hello. We have, thanks Acacia for introducing me to the City Council. Also, we have apartment buildings that my family runs called the Sands Apartments. And so one of the things is just that communication piece, because I think that a lot of businesses right now are trying to figure out, in the absence of sort of really set guidelines how to open up without being, for want of a better word, shamed or have people have some backlash against you on various things, right? So I think there's probably a truism that most public-facing retail operations have had some folks come at them for some state of operation over the last little while. But for the most part, what I've noticed is that if you communicate with people as well as you can, that's sort of minimized. So in our business, the doors of my apartment buildings look like billboards right now with all the different programs that are kind of there and different kind of like things they're trying to do to clean and blah, blah, blah. Probably have to make them a little more cleaner. The actual notices, about 4 or 5 of my doors that our managers have put up right now. And just the second thing, I guess, is around the programs. I've noticed that I'm also on the board as the City Council of Venture Kamloops, and the Venture Kamloops website has a bunch of resources there too, which is I think a little bit easier to find them. YK strong, just in terms of how it's sort of on the website. So that's been a useful thing for us to kind of be able to let our tenants know, where the different programs are. One of the challenges that we had initially was programs to international students at TRU looking for support on the rent or their income, and those have come over time a little bit too. So, I guess 2 things. One is the messaging, because I found that a little challenging in terms of what the public can feel, generally speaking, and how to mitigate that. And then secondly, just the idea of basically all the programs that are available out there and trying to keep track of those is sometimes a bit challenging.
Absolutely, yeah, and you're exactly right. It's really sad to me that people get shamed for opening. People weren't ever mandated to having to close some businesses, but because they stayed open, there was a perception out there that it wasn't right for whatever reason. And then we're given the message, shop local, right? So I'm a huge fan of shopping local. I am a huge fan of being able to stay open. If you can get the message out that you've got the right protocols in place and that, you've got the social distance or the physical distancing. I do not like the word social distancing. It's completely different. But physical distancing out there, then we should be shopping there and not feeling bad about it. So, let's support our businesses. And if they can open, help them be successful, and the messaging and the protocols is pretty much what they need to be in place. And that's what Bonnie Henry has been saying the whole time. If you've got that in place, you're okay. So messaging out to people that we've got these in place and we're open for business is not a bad thing. As a matter of fact, we should encourage it because, you know, she's very proud of the fact that we didn't shut down as much as most of the other provinces had to. And a lot of people chose to close, which is fine. But if they choose to open, let's support them. That's, you know, I think a message that we need to make clear to people and help them be successful at it with the protocols in place. Any other comments? Thanks for that, Arjun. Rocky.
Yeah, so I'd like to, especially with restaurants, you know, staying in touch with your suppliers, re-looking at your pricing, because like the beef industry, price is going up. Been working with a local restaurant downtown, and his beef price has gone up by $12 for what he was ordering, the same amount. So really keeping in touch with the supplier and finding out what the new pricing is coming forward, because things are going up for the restaurant industry, especially with beef and pork. And so I think really reevaluating what your price points are to what your menu prices are to remain profitable as well. So
absolutely, you can't charge what you used to for those kind of things. And that's a really good point. You know, we hear about things in the news about the meat packing plants shutting down because of COVID outbreaks. Well, the ripple effect is the price is going to go up, right? So what happens out in the news is going to affect our supply chain, and that affects our pricing. So great comments, Rocky. Thank you. Yeah. Anyone?
Rocky, I was just going to, sorry.
No.
I was just going to suggest to you, Rocky, what about the restaurant industry supporting local 4-H kids that now won't have their fall fairs? Could the restaurant industry not start hooking up with the 4-H clubs to purchase the kids' beef that they've been raising for the year?
I think there's a protocol with the government. They have to be approved as a supplier to restaurants. I know there's a few local ones around that are, you know, that can sell their beef to restaurants, but there is a system that you got to go through to do that. So yeah, very possible.
Because the beef is all sent to the government inspected butchers all around. So you would think maybe you could, I don't know, maybe there's a loophole where you could get it right from the butcher because it would be cut to your specifications, I think, which would be government inspected.
There might be an advocacy thing there. That, yeah. And you know, that's a really good example of a strategic partnership, right? That that can go on in any business. So strategic partnerships, you know, cutting out the middleman if you can. If you can't because you need those protocols in place, how do you make it work? And perhaps that's, you know, something that can be fit in.
Yeah, very good point. Like same with the vegetables and the local farmers that sell, you know, your fruit and vegetables too as well. Getting it local, and you know, a lot of that is prep work too. When you order from like Gordon Foods or some of the other big places, a lot of it comes sliced and ready to use. So having to cut your own vegetables down to, like if you're making a pizza, you know, you need to slice your green peppers and onions and tomatoes and mushrooms, whatnot. So having the machinery to do that is an extra cost as well. And so, you know, the savings, getting it local as opposed to getting it delivered in from afar. Yeah, so there's all kinds of little things would come into play with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Just a thought about that. Maybe we can talk TRU with a culinary program if the meat shop's not running at doing what it regularly does right now. Maybe there's an opportunity there.
Absolutely, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to solve all the world's problems today.
Well, I know that there's a lot of our 4-H kids that are now worried because they normally have their auction at the fall fair, and now everyone's going to be scrambling to find somebody to be able to purchase their beef for them.
Yeah.
You bet. Yeah.
Any other questions? If not, I will hand it back.
Cindy, I have a question. How would you recommend communicating out to your clients or your customers when right now people seem to be inundated by messaging from a store that they maybe have an online subscription to or that they bought online once, right? Like, I feel like there's a lot of different information coming out from people just about their response. So how would you recommend people communicate effectively to their stakeholders without just adding to the noise?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it depends on the business and how you've communicated with them before, right? And also how well you know them. You know, in Kamloops, we kind of are lucky because we have a lot of really good relationships with some of our clients. Nothing wrong with picking up the phone and just, hey, how are you, right? If that's effective. If it's not, you have thousands, you know, possibly one really, really personalized email. I think not doing anything is worse than not doing something. So pick something that really means something to them. Sometimes you can do it 3 different ways. You pick up the phone, you go on social media, and you email them and just try to get the message out. Sorry, we're closed. We're looking forward to opening. Don't know when that is. Or we're open now. If you are open now, did you know that we're open? Here's our new protocol. We'd be happy to take your appointment, right? So like I said, the message is different. How you get it there, I think you have to be really strategic with it. And, you know, it's not about the sale. It's about, we care about you more than anything else. And I don't mean that in disingenuously. I mean it, that you want to stay in touch with your clients. Any business owner does. And it's important to do it no matter how you do it. And if you don't do it, you're worse off. So yeah, it's going to be, is it going to be part of the noise? It is, but it's better than not being there at all, in my opinion. What's everyone else think?
Cindy, it's Arjun here. I just think it does kind of speak to the idea of like almost having an opt-in email list that you build like with your clients over a bunch of times. So you can kind of notice that some people have been communicating with me who I I'm a client of over the last little while. Just and that's been really quite nice to read a lot of those emails. And they haven't been every day, but they've been like every week or whatever, right? Just another question on the cash flow situation. Like, are there like, I'm just trying to, because I think a lot of people are kind of thinking about cash flow right now, and are there like, are there seminars, are there kind of resources, are there things that people can tap into on that? Because it's something I think is quite important for folks to really kind of, really have a really good handle on now more than ever kind of thing, right? So I was wondering whether there's anything coming down the pike either locally or stuff that we would kind of know, resources that we can maybe share.
I know that we actually hosted a session managing cash flow during COVID with M&P. And I think the facilitator of that session did express interest in hosting it again. You're absolutely right. Cash flow is a huge issue for people. But right now, I think it's just the access to the cash flow that's hurting people the most. Because a lot of our like sole proprietors or people who pay themselves in dividends, people who hire contractors, they're not eligible for any of the subsidies that have come down. And then on top of that, we have businesses whose commercial landlords won't play in the sandbox and take advantage of those programs. So as much as I think there is a lack of understanding with cash flow, I also think that there is just a severe issue with people having access to cash in this time. And that's more of the problem, right?
Absolutely. Look after tax revenue at all, right? Well, I mean, it's not hard to look after it, but it's, there's no program for no revenue, and that's a tough one. So Yeah.
What we did after that M&P session is Jesse actually sent us a cash flow projection template that people were able to utilize for their own companies. So if you hear of anyone or you want it or someone's looking for it, we have that on file and we'd be happy to share it around. And I do know that we're likely going to host an M&P session again sometime in the next month or so. Yeah.
And also Venture Kamloops has a cash flow statement template, and we're happy to work with anybody to help figure that out along the way. For sure. But I think, Acacia, you've nailed it on the head. Businesses that are not qualifying for the programs are definitely, they're finding it difficult to access cash. And that is a major challenge.
And one challenge too is that, you know, we're hearing these announcements, but we're not, the plans to execute those announcements aren't in place. Right. And so we've seen that over the last few weeks where we're here, there's relief coming, and yet it's weeks, sometimes months before that even takes place. And unfortunately, not everyone is eligible for that small business loan to try and carry their cash flow until those funds were available. But I think that's also important to keep in mind that government is making like swift and fast changes to these programs because they're listening to industry and they know that they're not working or they're not hitting enough people. So you know, our hope through the chamber is that the advocacy work that we do will hopefully encourage the government to put some more accessible supports in place.
Sure, for sure. Yeah, and it's one thing to have a cash flow template, another thing to know how to use it. So that's something that a lot of us train people or work with people on. So, you know, there's Nicole, there's myself, Anna, Acacia, you know.
I can't help with that. I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. You don't want my help. I can give you a template though.
Yeah, it's like
I'm definitely happy to help for sure in that regard.
Yeah, and that's usually the disconnect is how do you, you know, how do you use it? So putting everything into implementation.
So Cindy, are you recommending the guests today that if they haven't done a plan, that they jump into it right away? I think, you know, a lot of us have heard that there's probably going to be an announcement in the coming week or weeks about what reopening looks like. And so I think it's probably encouraged that if you haven't started working on a reopen plan, that you kind of get the ball rolling because you want to be ready so that you can kind of action that plan as soon as possible once you have the guidelines.
By the time you find out you can open might be too late to plan properly. So starting to plan now, just give yourself that gift. You don't have to do it fast. You can still, you know, I've heard some businesses saying this is actually the first weeks off that I've had in years. So they are enjoying the break. And you know what? That's really key to being able to get back and be able to lead your company after. Now's the time to plan. It's time to really sit down and the more you do that, the easier the opening is going to be. The better trained, the more well off your people will be. Everything will go a lot smoother. I'm not going to say it's going to be perfect, never is, but that's okay. All I can say is nobody knows what's going to happen. And if you wait for it, you're going to get left behind. So just do what you can. And that's the message. Plan. That's it.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm just looking at the time here. It looks like we've got about 3 minutes left. There's a few of us on this call that have to jump on to an 11 o'clock. So I think we'll wrap it up. If you do have any more questions for Cindy, I know that she'd be happy to reach out to you and to answer them. So please feel free to do so. I'd just like to take this moment, as every chamber event, to thank our chamber corporate partners. We have Abbott Wealth Management, Excel Personnel, Chambers of Commerce Group Insurance Plan, M&P Accounting, Consulting and Tax, and the Trans Mountain Corporation. Thanks very much for joining us today. We hope that you learned a lot. And thank you, Cindy, for putting this together. It was fantastic.
Thanks, Acacia. It was fun. Thanks, everyone. It was fun to do. So good to see you all.
Yeah, nice to see everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah.
Bye.